Ahoy, you cursed listener. Tell me, have you ever felt the call of the abyss? Have you ever heard tales whispered by the salty wind, stories of a treasure so vast it could sink entire kingdoms? Well, listen closely. This is not a story of maps scribbled on old scrolls or treasure chests buried on forgotten shores. No, this is the tale of the greatest heist to ever stain the oceans. A plunder so monstrous, so bold, that it made kings tremble, empires collapse. And the sea itself sealed a pact of silence. And at the heart of this storm, a cursed name, Henry Every. He was no ordinary sea wolf. No, he fooled the Royal Navy, defied the British throne, and carved his name deep into the legend as the only pirate to pull off the perfect heist and vanish. He stole a sacred ship from the Mughal Empire, faced cannons and curses, and disappeared without a trace, like smoke carried away by the wind. But the gold he took, they say it bears the weight of 1,000 souls, and every lost coin from that treasure still cries out for vengeance, echoing through the tides like an ancient spell. So listen closely, sailor, for this story is not told lightly. Many who have heard of Henry Every have felt a chill down their spine, and some were never seen again. Perhaps for daring to seek him, perhaps for dreaming too much of the gleam of gold that does not belong to this world. And now you hear these words. Is it too late? Has the curse already found you? The beginning of the ghost. Who was Henry Every? Before he became a shadow between the waves and a legend among men, Henry Every was just another anonymous figure on the drenched decks of the Royal Navy. Born around 1659, some say in Devon, others swear it was in a village so forgotten that not even maps dare to name it. Every emerged into the world as one man among 1,000, but with eyes that told a different story, eyes that saw beyond the horizon, eyes that understood that rules were made for fools, and the seas, those were the domain of the bold. Even as a young man, he quickly learned that honor doesn't fill your belly, and that between storms and lashes, the sea does not forgive the weak. He served on merchant ships, hunted smugglers, and at one point it became one himself. They say his tongue was as sharp as his sword and that his mind was a map of secret routes, hidden scams, and dangerous plans. But he was still just another name among many, until the fateful year of 1694, and with it the opportunity that would change everything. That cursed year, Every boarded the English warship Charles II as a second officer, stationed under the unforgiving sun of Cadiz. The crew, tired, starving, and betrayed by broken promises, was on the brink of explosion. And Every? He didn't wait. In the dead of night, he led a bloody mutiny. Men were silenced with blades. Blood spilled onto the planks. When the sun rose, a new captain stood among the masts. His name echoed like thunder. Henry Every. He renamed the ship Fancy, an ironic name for a vessel that would soon plunge the world into terror. It was on that deck, to the sound of screams and sails torn by the wind, that Every sealed a cursed fate. With his eyes fixed on the east, he made an oath to his new crew. They would sail to the ends of the Indian Ocean, cross forbidden lands, and plunder the greatest treasure ever carried across the seas. A strike against the very heart of the East. A raid on the wealthiest empire on earth, and who would dare to stop them? Have you ever heard of the Great Mogul Treasure Convoy? No? Then listen, and listen well. It was a sacred fleet, protected by warriors, cannons, and prayers. It set sail from Mecca, carrying not only gold and jewels, but the faith and pride of the Mughal Empire, ruled by Aurangzeb, an emperor as powerful as he was feared. The ships carried offerings, relics, and riches that would make even the King of England seem like a beggar. And Henry Every wanted it all. Imagine, listener, what that meant. An English pirate, cursed by his own kind, aiming straight for the heart of a sacred empire. It was madness. It was blasphemy. It was suicide. But to Every, it was just the next move in a game he'd never lost. And the world, poor world, had no idea that the greatest heist in history was about to begin. The Mughal treasure hunt. A coup against an empire. In 1695, Under the relentless heat of the Indian Ocean's sun, Henry Every and his crew knew exactly what they were after. It wasn't just gold, it wasn't just power. They were chasing a living legend, the sacred convoy of the Great Mogul. Coming from Mecca, the ships carried the fruits of faith, war, and royalty. Cargoes of pure gold, shimmering silver, rubies that seemed to hold fire at their core, emeralds as big as seagull eggs, silks that shimmered like water under the moon, and it all belonged to one man, Emperor Aurangzeb, the ruler of one of the greatest and wealthiest empires on earth. A man who claimed to be chosen by Allah, and who was believed to be untouchable by pirates. But Henry Every didn't believe in untouchables. His target was the most feared and imposing ship in the convoy, the Ganj-i-Sawai, which means exceptional treasure. Imagine this, listener. A true city on the waves armed with over 80 cannons manned by hundreds of Mughal soldiers and imperial guards. A sacred colossus, a symbol of an empire's power, cutting through the waters with divine arrogance. A monster but that Every swore to bring down. Can you picture it? A handful of dirty, barefoot pirates with hungry eyes and hearts filled with rage, staring down the greatest floating fortress of the East. Under a bronze sky, the black flag of the fancy waved like an omen of doom. And when the Ganj-i-Sawai spotted that shadow on the horizon, perhaps it laughed. Perhaps it underestimated the devil that was closing in. The chase lasted for days. Treacherous winds blew. The sails cracked like whips. The crew of the Fancy battled exhaustion. But Every's eyes shone as if he could see the very throne of the heavens before them. And then, the moment arrived. The Ganj-i-Sawai had run aground on its fate. Cannons were loaded, swords were sharpened, and the roar of battle erupted like thunder at the ends of the earth. The sea turned into a battlefield. Shards flew, masts were split in half, and smoke suffocated the air. Aboard the Mughal ship, chaos reigned. The soldiers screamed prayers, but no deity answered. Each deck became a hell. Every's crew, bloodthirsty and possessed by an ancient fury, stormed the treasure halls. There was no mercy. Men were struck down without pity, and blood mixed with silk and gold. The Mughal captain fell, and with him, the last thread of hope for that floating empire. And then, silence. A silence so thick it seemed to freeze time itself. When the smoke cleared, all that remained of the Ganj-i-Sawai was a mutilated ship and a hold full of fortune. Valued at over 200,000 pounds back then, the equivalent of hundreds of millions today, that loot wasn't just the largest in pirate history. It was an affront to the civilized world, an outrage to the gods, an eternal scar on the maps of time. But this, you cursed listener, was only the beginning. For gold, curses, and by touching it, Every sealed a pact no mortal should dare to make. The echoes of this crime crossed continents. Kings demanded his head. Empires called for revenge. What he unleashed that day wasn't just treasure, but a curse that would never be erased from the waters. And now I ask you, what would you do? With the entire world hunting you down and pockets full of gold that screams in the dark? The escape and the disappearance. The ghost pirate. With the holds packed full of gold, jewels, and sacred artifacts that should never have left the temples of the East, Henry Every did the unthinkable. While other pirates sank into rum and arrogance, he acted with surgical coldness. There were no loud celebrations, no challenges to the crowns of the world. He simply vanished, disappeared into the mists of history like a legend that refuses to die. No cell could hold him. No court judged him. No executioner ever touched his bones. He shared part of the loot with his crew and erased his traces from the maps as if he had never existed. Some sailors swear they saw his sail cutting through the winds of the Bahamas, hidden among reefs and promises of silence. Others whisper that he returned to England under a false name, living as a reclusive lord in Devon, surrounded by books and nightmares. Some say he died old, but never managed to sleep in peace. Because, they say, the gold of the Ganj-i-Sawai didn't bring luck. It brought a curse. The British crown, humiliated before the Mughal Empire, found itself forced to do something unprecedented: offer the largest bounty ever recorded in naval history for the head of a pirate. The king wanted blood, the Eastern Empire demanded justice, and so began a relentless hunt, with warships cutting through the seas, ports being searched, and informants paid handsomely for any clue. But every was like mist at dawn, slipping through the fingers of the world's most powerful men. It was as if the sea had claimed him, as if Poseidon or something even older had hidden him by choice. While his pursuers went mad with the emptiness, the name Henry Every became myth. But the echoes of his heist, those never quieted. In dark taverns, sailors still whisper about him with fear in their eyes, as if uttering his name could awaken demons sleeping in the depths. Some of his men weren't so lucky. Many were captured, tried for piracy, and executed with the crowd cheering as the noose snapped tight. But what scared them the most was what happened to the others. There were those who suddenly went mad. One of them screamed in the dead of night, claiming to see burning eyes in the reflection of the water. Another pulled out his own teeth, saying they were being replaced by melted gold coins. A third claimed he could hear chains dragging in the ship's hold, even when they were on solid ground. Do you believe that? That a treasure could carry the wrath of an entire empire? That something stolen with so much blood and blasphemy could curse not only bodies, but souls as well? Or maybe there's something else. Something that doesn't belong to this world, or the next. Maybe Every didn't disappear by cunning. Maybe he was taken. And you, listener, what would you do if you had the chance to find that gold now, buried in some forgotten reef waiting for greedy hands to touch it once again? Would you risk it? Would you enter the pact? Would you listen to the wails still echoing in the waves and dig deeper? Remember, some treasures don't shine. They whistle, they call, and when you answer, maybe it's already too late. If you too feel that chill down your spine, that shiver blowing up from the depths of the ocean, then join our crew. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep sailing through the mysteries of the seas. There are still many secrets to uncover and curses to face. The legend lives, the cursed gold and the echoes in time. Henry Every strike echoed like thunder through the halls of palaces and the foul alleys of the ports. The Mughal Empire, wounded in both pride and faith, demanded an immediate response from England. Diplomacy trembled. Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor, didn't see the act as a mere crime, but as a declaration of war. In London, the nobles turned pale. The East India Company, which profited from the sacred trade between nations, was threatened with extinction. And all because of one man, one pirate. Henry Every became a cursed name. To mention him was dangerous. To hunt him down was a duty. To find him was to enter the history books. But as much as the world searched for him, one question grew in the shadows. Where was the treasure? The fabulous loot from the Ganj-i-Sawai was never recovered. No bank reported unusual deposits. No port saw suspicious shipments. No city was built with that wealth. It was as if the gold had dissolved in time, or had been buried by hands that knew too much. Over the centuries, Every's treasure became more than a fortune. It became a ghost. Treasure hunters crossed oceans. They scoured every island in the Caribbean, turned forgotten caves along the African coast, and even dared the frozen fjords of Scotland, all in search of the relics from the most legendary heist in maritime history. In Puerto Rico, a fisherman found Mughal coins with Persian inscriptions. In Madagascar, archaeologists swear they saw Sanskrit symbols carved into black stones hidden deep in the jungle. And in the Bermuda Islands, someone found a charred map with markings only visible in the light of the full moon. But every clue comes at a price. They say the archaeologist from Madagascar vanished without a trace after claiming he was about to find the Chamber of Death. In Socotra, a sworn diver died with his eyes wide open, his face frozen in panic, after surfacing screaming that he saw a ship beneath the sea with sails that were still moving. In Barbados, a historian went mad after opening a chest that had been locked for centuries. His last words were, "It's still here." Coincidence? Maybe. But what if it's something more? What if the treasure isn't just cursed, but guarded, and not by men? Some say Henry Every never wanted to hide the gold. He wanted to seal it, lock it away in a place between worlds where no human ambition could touch it. Because maybe, even he realized too late that he had stolen something that didn't belong to this time. Can you imagine that? A gold that doesn't shine, but corrupts. A loot that doesn't enrich, but consumes. And still, it calls. Yes, listener, there are reports of whispers on moonless nights, voices carried by the wind coming from forgotten caves and abandoned reefs, calling names no one remembers, except the sea. And still, there are always the fools. Every decade, new adventurers, new hunters, new damned souls arise. They carry rusty compasses, torn maps, and the old hope of finding the gold that devoured Henry Every. Some return empty-handed. Others never return at all. But the legend grows. It feeds on them and waits. You, there on the other side, what would you do? If you found a chest sealed by rusty chains covered in symbols you don't recognize, would you open it? Would you have the courage to touch what even kings dared not claim? Could you resist the call, or would you give in like so many others? The sea holds secrets that were never meant to be discovered. And Henry Every's treasure may be the greatest of them all. Maybe it's buried under the sands of some nameless island. Or maybe it's closer than you think, waiting for someone to say, "I don't believe in curses, but beware, sailor." Because the sea listens, and certain words awaken things that sleep in the depths. Henry Every, the ghost pirate, the only man to raid an entire empire and vanish on the horizon with no chains, no gallows, no known end. His strike was so perfect that not even time could erase his trail, because, simply put, there are no trails, just legends, just the whisper of a name that makes old sailors cross themselves and makes the sea tremble, because the ocean has memory, and in it, Every is not just a story, he's a living curse. They say that when the sky fills with clouds and the sea turns as dark as ink, there's a voice that rises from the waves, a voice that calls, not for help, not for peace, but for revenge. Could it be Every's spirit guarding his gold until the end of time? Or something older, darker, awakened by the greed of a man who dared steal the empire of the gods? Whatever it is, the gold still calls, and those who listen are never the same again. If you feel that call too, if you want to follow forgotten tracks, unearth forbidden legends, and face the mysteries of the deep ocean, then join our crew. Comment. Where do you think Henry Every's cursed gold lies, and tell me, how far would you go to find it? Click subscribe, but beware, because once you set sail on this journey, you might hear the same whisper. Some say Henry Every ran off with gold. Others say he ran from his very fate. But what about you? What would you run from?